Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to receive the world's first international medical podcast, hosted by 3 paramedics from different countries. Live from the UK, Finland and Australia, this is Group Call.
Hi guys, and thank you for tuning in. We call them water fairies. We constantly taking the piss on how tired they are, constantly rescuing cats from trees and permanently sleeping between meals. Is that true? Our firefighters actually saw a new service. Is there a place for a good cooperation between paramedics and firefighters instead of a friendly rivalry? We will show you today the international perspective straight from Finland, Australia, UK, and most importantly today, from United States of America. This is Group Call Live. Morning, gents. How are you?
Good. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah.
Good morning.
Guys, on the beginning, disclaimer. I was a firefighter, well, a medic firefighter. Harrison has also a firefighting background, right?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
Teemu.
So we're allowed to talk shit on them. Free pass.
So yeah, we are excused. Teemu, you don't have any firefighting background, don't you?
No, not even like volunteer or anything. No, nothing.
Okay.
I've used like the thing that you cover the pot with, if it's like a oil fire, and then I've used like an extinguisher. That's it.
Okay, fine.
Does that count?
No.
I put out a bonfire.
Okay, now you're excused. now you can take it back in this discussion. Guys, how does it look like in your countries? Because in the United Kingdom, where I have the pleasure to live and work for the last 7 years now, the cooperation between firefighters and paramedics is quite good, and I will tell you about so-called Jesse principles in a second. I just want to say that all those good things I will tell about firefighters are true. However, there is still massive friendly rivalry between us, and there are plenty of jokes you actually can bring up in terms of firefighters and paramedics. But to the business. So in the United Kingdom, what we use is so-called Jesse rule or Jesse principles. And there are 5 principles of working together with the fire brigade, which is going from the top, from the red. Collocate, so you want to collocate with other responders as soon as practically possible. A single safe and easily identified location of the incident. Then the green one, you want to communicate. So you want to communicate using language which is clear and free from technical jargon and abbreviations. Then the purple one, you want to coordinate. So coordinate by agreeing the lead organization, identify priorities, resources, capabilities, and limitations for an effective response, including the timing of further meetings. The blue one, identified, so jointly understand the risk. So it's not only the risk from medical perspective or fire perspective. We want to actually understand how it works, and we want to do it together. And the last one, the amber one, shared situational awareness. So again, we want to understand together, and if anything changes, what we want to do is we want to share between us, and that's how we work. I need to say that I had a pleasure to work with I think one of the best fire brigades in this country, which is Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue. By the way, guys, cracking job on the last RTC, thank you. They are pretty good in communication, and they are pretty good in not overtaking the situation, because what I experienced in Poland, and I'm sorry, my Polish colleagues, I'm not going to shit on you now, is that sometimes fire brigade is almost like an FBI in American movies, like showing us the badge, and I'm overtaking this job. It's not like this in this country, at least here where I work in Oxford area, they are really good. They are understanding. They come to you and they say, what do you want and how do you want us to do it? If you don't have an idea, fine, we will let you know how we can do it. And something which I did not experience back in Poland, which they have here, is so-called Rapid X. Now, there are few words you should not be using in presence of firefighters, okay? And one is free food. But let's face it, you should not saying free food in presence of paramedics as well. But yeah, basically they will be more interested in this rather than anything else. But Rapid X. So if you want your patient out from the confined space, i.e. car, what you say is Rapid X. And then they don't make the hole to fit the patient. They make the patient to fit the hole. So unless you are absolutely sure that you want to use this procedure, there's, let's say your patient just arrested and you want them out now, you call Rapid X and then they do their magic, and it's really amazing to observe. And I wish to have some videos I could show you. Unfortunately, I cannot for obvious reasons, but it's amazing to observe. What is your experience, guys?
So in Australia, the fire service is separate to the ambulance service. So which I believe in across all our three countries is kind of similar. Definitely very different to how it is in a lot of services in America. So for American listeners and viewers, you might be familiar with the term third service. That's what our whole ambulance system basically is based on here in Australia. And fire is strictly fire and rescue for the most part. Now, there is some services in the state that I live in New South Wales as well, and I believe possibly in another state. It's not everywhere, but the firefighters will do what they call EMR, which is emergency medical response. So they'll co-respond to things like cardiac arrests and the like, along with us, but that's kind of where their utility as a medical response ends. Now, road rescue is by and large the domain of the fire services. So ambulances don't carry any rescue equipment, it's strictly for fire. There are some specialty rescue services that are separate from fire again. Typically, they're usually volunteer agencies in some locations. But yeah, fire do fire and ambulance do medical, which in my perspective is probably the better way of doing it. We put up some posts on Reddit, and in the perspective of some other people, it is also the better way of doing it. But also, I don't have the benefit of having worked in a situation where fire are a medical response and do have ambulances and do staff paramedics from the fire service. So I don't really have anything to directly compare it to, but that's how we run it here. Is they put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and then they go to bed, and we do all the hard work.
Teemu?
Yeah, so I think our system is very different to the UK, Australia, and also like the American model. We have some similarities with the US. So what mostly happens in Finland, obviously each little area is its own, but even for like medical jobs, so basically almost, well, not all, but most like category 1, like category A jobs will also get like first response from the fire. So it's there in case they get there first, and then they can start treatment and start assessing the patients. But then also so that if for some reason we need rapid extrication from a home, not from a car, but also from a car, but mostly like from a like an apartment up in the like a block of apartments or something, then they are already there, and we can use them for lift assist basically. They do most of the like the motorway, road traffic accidents, obviously, and all the fires, and ambulances will get sent out to those by default, but then also by request. But the thing is that a lot of the firefighters in Finland are trained as EMTs, at least EMTs, so it's part of their training. A lot of them actually do the proper EMT course as well. And then, for example, in my area, the fire service operates about 30% of the ambulances. So they will have ALS paramedics employed, but they also put their firefighters on the trucks with the paramedics. So the fire service paramedics, they work usually alongside a firefighter during the day, whereas I'm crewed up with a paramedic or an EMT. But then obviously I sometimes get crewed up with the firefighters as well, and they are good. But it does show that their training is shorter and not so in-depth, even compared to the EMTs and especially compared to paramedics. And one specialty to mention is that the capital, Helsinki, only operates ambulances from the fire service. So it's a fire-based EMS system, and they have firefighters that are also paramedics, like proper bachelor's degree paramedics, and they will do 12 hours on a fire engine, and then 12 hours in the ambulance during a 24-hour shift that they are working.
So they sleep for at least 12 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So in Finland, the paramedics that work for the fire service, do they have to start off as firefighters? Like, are they dual trained, and do you have to start as a firefighter then become a paramedic, or are they separate?
No, so the paramedics that, for example, in my area, the paramedics that work for the fire service, like I don't think any of them are trained firefighters. I think they are all just paramedics. In Helsinki, they employ some only paramedics, and then they have firefighters that have become paramedics and got their bachelor's degree after the fact. But the way it works, it's usually either you are a paramedic or you're a firefighter, and if you're a firefighter, then you can do the EMT course or the bachelor's degree. But it's very rare to like have a paramedic that trains as a firefighter afterwards.
The firefighters do. What's the extent of that? Like, is it just in the sort of EMT role? Like, I mean, some EMTs out there, it's not in their scope to take a blood sugar. Or if New Jersey, in America, that's a thing which is bizarre to me. But it's like, what's their sort of their scope to do that sort of stuff?
So the firefighters that haven't done like the EMT course or the paramedic course, they can do basic ops, blood pressure, heart rate, like oxygen saturation. They can do ECGs, they can do blood sugars, they can open IV lines, they can give IV medication, but they can't, like it has to be the paramedic that decides on it, and like tells them the amount and stuff. I would say the firefighters that haven't done like the proper EMT course, they do the assessments, but most of the time they don't know what to do with the actual numbers. They will learn on the job, obviously, and pick it up eventually, but still I would say a person that has gone through the EMT course has much more capabilities in like doing diagnosis and like differentials and stuff, and trying to figure out what's what. And then obviously, like if you've done the EMT course or you've done the paramedic course proper, then I would expect like you will be able to work at the same level. But then we run into the problem that they also work fire, so they get like half of the exposure that the EMTs get and the paramedics get. But that's I think we're going to be touching on that later on.
Yeah, yes, because our firefighters, as I mentioned, are strictly for cardiac arrest, choking. So the only sort of patient contact they do prior to us arriving, they can obviously start compressions, put the pads on. They've basically got an AED, an automated defib, and they carry oxygen and they can use a bag valve mask to oxygenate a patient.
Mm,
But once we arrive, they're strictly relegated to compressions.
Oh,
yeah.
So they're basically the core pulse, the Lucas,
human
whatever.
Lucas
Yeah, whatever mechanical CPR
device
device you
is.
carry. That's basically what they are,
Mhm.
and we do everything else.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
they can sometimes they're utilized for fetching stuff, but that's about where their sort of utility ends in our service. Once we arrive, if they have been bagging the patient, it's now us. It's a qualified paramedic on the airway and getting a definitive airway and the like. So,
So it's this.
and yeah, similar to other responses that they join us on, like choking and stuff. It's really the basic advanced life support, like a critical life support, and then once we arrive, it's handed over to us immediately. So they're not well, I guess in a sense they are handing over care, but it's almost like they didn't really have it to begin with. They were just warming the seat for us to get there, if that kind of makes sense. And that's not. I don't mean those terms to disparage the emergency medical response that they do here, because they do a really fantastic job, particularly in timeframes and the like, and also just by virtue of having more people on scene. Like, we've got 2 paramedics in the truck, and then we're joined by 4 firefighters, so you can just have a constant stream of good quality compressions. They're very easily coachable, but yeah, they don't perform any assessments.
Okay, so
It's like a cheaper Lucas device.
come on.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. If
Well,
any-
cheaper. I don't know. They get paid pretty well. So.
They are. If any firefighter would like to give us a call and express their anger, please do it on WhatsApp. The number is 0790 8947 0790 8947. This is a WhatsApp number, so it's free for you guys whenever on planet Earth you are. That's quite interesting what you said, guys, because it's quite different to the United Kingdom. I mean, slightly different, because, for example, if our water ferries will arrive first and they will start, let's say, CPR, and then we arrive, it's basically up to us what they will do and how we will manage the scene. So they are pretty flexible. If we want them to just stay on the compressions, that's fine. But for example, if I see that they have a good airway with BVM, I can leave them there till my definitive airway is sorted. So yeah, that's slightly different. However, in terms of equipment, I think that's pretty much the same. There's a basic stuff for catastrophic hemorrhage management, very basic airway, oxygen, and AED. That's what they have on fire engines. I said on the beginning of our podcast that we have something special today from the United States of America, because what they have is this special, I'm looking for a proper word, special model of being a firefighter and a paramedic, which is, I think, completely different to anything in the world, even to Finland. But we will see in a moment. Gina will tell us about how it is to be a firefighter paramedic and what you actually need to do to become such a person.
Hello, this is Gina LaRuini with the United States of America in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, first you have to be a paramedic no matter what. So you have to have your national registry or your state licensure for that state that you're applying to. Another thing is fire department. The firefighters, they have either a county academy, their own academy, or their, a city academy. It just depends upon what state, which region you live in. Like, I know, example, St. Louis City has their own separate academy, whereas opposed to St. Louis County has their own academy. So it just depends upon where you work. You might have to have a separate county academy or academy school for that fire department training. So I know in high school and colleges, they offer Fire 1 and Fire 2 here in the United States. You take that as a base and get your feet wet in fire, and then from there, depending upon where you desire to work as to what rules in school and academy you're going to go to from there. There's always constant training too as well. So even if you do get that firefighter paramedic job, you have medical training as well as fire department training as well as regional training. So there's always constant training. The salary, depending upon what agency, what region you work for, what county you work for, can be significantly bigger if you're that firefighter paramedic. Why? The reason is you could be utilized in both the ambulance and the fire apparatus, depending upon whatever position your desire is on the ambulance then and or the fire truck, then you could be utilized. The pay just depends upon if you work that same firefighter paramedic job in California, it could be lower than if you do it in Missouri. So it's just, again, the inflation rate wherever you work. Other than that, being a firefighter paramedic here in the United States is pretty beneficial. But I wish you guys have a great day. And I have a few friends that would like to also talk to you guys about being a firefighter paramedic. So thank you. Have a great day.
We will see those videos in a second. Just like to sum up what Gina said. So basically, if I understood correctly, guys, it's like with everything in the United States. It depends where you live and where you work. Great. So yeah, you can have a proper education with a paramedicine and then got a second degree with any of those academies, or you can start as a firefighter and then do your medical bit again. Wow. However, one thing that struck me the most is that it's always really better paid job than just being a paramedic or just being a firefighter, which is obvious and not really obvious. Anyway, in a moment we will talk about this model. We will bring up some Reddit comments, because what we did, we started some discussion on Reddit, asking our viewers what do they think and what is their opinion on firefighters and firefighter paramedics. So in a moment we will touch on that, but first let's see our firefighters, paramedics straight from United States of America.
My name's Tori, and I'm currently working at Merrimack Ambulance District. I'm in medic school, and I eventually want to be a firefighter paramedic because I think it's awesome running towards the danger and saving people when they need us the most.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Sean Reynolds, firefighter at Ferguson Department. I'm in paramedic school right now. The reason I got in paramedic school is because I kind of want to help learn better about my field, advance myself more, and learn different skill base. I always had a love for the medical side as well. Being a firefighter in Ferguson is a great job to have, and a lot of experience came with it. A lot of veterans that have been doing it for 30 plus years that can mentor you, get you right, and actually understand where you're coming from. One thing I would like to say, like I learned or something from the service, is always go out there and give it 100% and always move with a purpose. If you can do those two things, I think you'll last pretty well. And generally have a love for what you do.
My name's Ellie. I work currently at Medic 1. I'm in medic school right now, and my end goal is to be a firefighter paramedic because I love helping people. I love doing something different every day. And yeah, I'm really excited.
People that are willing to sort of talk very proudly about their industry are often going to be like better representatives of those sorts of employees. I mean, a lot of the on Reddit were along the lines of, fire-based EMS and fire-based paramedics are often comparatively less empathetic. There was one comment I recall saying they're typically less empathetic than standalone EMS personnel. And there's also the obvious difference in typically education based as well. I think that's the sort of the big difference from an outsider's perspective of why I like this service, this model better, because I mean, evidence-based medicine is still a reasonably new thing. I mean, really the last couple of decades, and typically speaking, the fire service is very traditionalist and very sort of, I don't want to say set in their ways, but set in their ways. They're very like, this is the way we do it because this is the way we've always done it. That was my perspective from being in the fire service. So it's not an outside perspective. Again, apologize to any firefighters that are saying, no, I'm progressive. But that's tends to be my outlook. And there was one comment that I've just lost here. But it was along the same lines of, there's almost this disconnect with a very traditionalist based system of fire trying to evolve into evidence-based medicine and regularly changing. I mean, even something as simple as, well, I say as simple, but the high performance CPR or the pit crew CPR that we're doing now, and a lot of places are doing now, where you're charging the defibrillator while you're still doing compressions. I mean, that alone was hard enough to make that culture change with us, let alone with a very traditionalist sort of base system. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I will tell you one thing, because I had pleasure to train a few Australian paramedics. I mean, to train to show the British system, to Britishize a few Australian paramedics, and I need to say that this thingy with charging the defib is still the thing. It's still there, and it was like 4 years ago when I trained the last Australian paramedic. They were still doing this thing with defib and charging the defib whilst person is still on the chest. So yeah, but what you said is quite interesting. You said about them being very like traditional and like regimented, and that's what I like about fire service, to be honest. Because look, if you want to change something, you just give them an order. You say, from now on we will be wearing yellow hard hats, and they are fine. Okay, Bosch yellow hard hat. Even if they won't like it, they will do it because they are so uniformized. Uniformized, is that the word? Whilst with paramedics, you will say to them, "Oh, from tomorrow your uniforms will be blue," and they will be like, "Oh, why? Oh, actually, I would prefer green. No, actually, red would be better." And you cannot actually make clinicians do something because they always have so many different opinions.
Yeah. That's I completely agree with that, Alex. Like I did my military service in Finland before I went to school for paramedicine, and it was the same obviously in the military. You would get like a notice that, okay, from this day forward we are doing this, and then that was it, end of discussion. And then in the EMS service you will get like that notice, and then, okay, we are going to be doing this from now on. Oh, where's my training? I need to be trained before I can do this. And oh, I've only got 2 hours of training. I was supposed to get 3. And what about this study and that study? Because this says that and that says that. And why are we doing this? And actually, I don't like this at all. I think we should be doing the third thing. And then somebody will start a committee and they will discuss it for half a year. And then in the end, we will do the thing that the notice said.
It's funny you mention that, Timo, because we, like as part of our COVID response, we were supplemented by a lot of Defence Force personnel. I've never been in the military myself, but working alongside some of these Defence Force personnel, it's absolutely true what you say from an Australian perspective as well. They do what you tell them, and they don't question it because that's their ethos. They're very obviously disciplined, and you give them a directive, an order, a task, and they do it. And the firefighters that we work alongside at a cardiac arrest or at whatever job we may, a road trauma, for example, they're exactly the same. They'll sit there, and then they'll wait for you to give them a direction. You give them a direction, and they'll do it. They don't question it. Whereas, yeah, exactly right. You ask a paramedic, you go, can you draw up this drug for me? Like, oh, actually, like, should we give this instead? So, yeah, it is very, like, very good in that way, where if you want something done, you ask them to do it and it'll get done.
But
So,
on the flip side, though, like, and there were comments on Reddit about this. Like somebody said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, the fire service more often, not always, holds EMS back. Lack of support for higher education being a big example. Yes, you will have quality differences absolutely everywhere, but the best medics get to focus solely on the medicine, and it shows. If they also need to learn engineering and fire behavior, and that's a lot to ask. And all too many systems see EMS as something they have to do to advance their career, not something they want to do." And I think that speaks to the fact, like, why are we challenging like directives and SOPs and stuff like that? Is just because we are coming from a higher education background. We are used to that sort of scientific debate and
critical thinking.
Yeah, critical thinking. Like, you're not going to be accepting something at face value. But then I think we have sometime in the past, we also lost something that now we are fighting about every little thing and resisting every little change, when we actually should be just accepting it. And then we could be doing studies on it when it has been implemented, and then looking at that data and then having that discussion when we do know if it worked, in what areas and where it didn't work. Because now we are just challenging things, I think, just out of habit. And I think that's what fire does better, is that they don't challenge just to challenge.
But that brings
differences.
Yeah, but discussing this American model also, because that's where we started. It reminds me of a conversation, Tim, we had when we basically started this podcast, and we were thinking about this topic, and you said, I think that being a firefighter and a medic sucks because of the cognitive load, because you can learn only X, Y, Z number of things.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I still very much think that. And as I said before, like in Finland, when you have firefighters that get their EMT training on their course, or they do their EMT course, or they even do their bachelor's, and then they work maybe half and half, or they might do 60% fire, 70% fire, and then some on the ambulance. In 5 years, if you take that firefighter EMT and you compare it to like a paramedic EMT, like a EMT course EMT that only does ambulance, there's gonna be a huge difference in their knowledge base, if they've had the same kind of support and mentoring and stuff. Obviously, anybody can pick up bad habits from the job, but they will just not learn as quickly on the job because they get so much less of the ambulance like exposure.
And that's not not an indictment on those firefighter paramedics. It's just common sense. When you look at it from two perspectives, when you look at it with continuing education, I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, so there's only so many hours that you can dedicate to continuing education. And if you need to split that between fire-based education, fire behavior and engineering, as mentioned, structures and further training with hazmat and all that sort of thing, and then do paramedic as well. There's only so much education there. And then there's the exposure part where if you're doing, I don't know what the split would be for, the fire-based paramedics that are also firefighters, but if you go to 10 jobs a day, 5 of them fire, 5 of them medical, versus someone that does 10 medical, it's obviously, going to be over a period of time, you're going to get more experience there. And again, we're not trying to down talk, the people that do it, because they're much better firefighters than I am right now because I haven't done it in years and I've focused on paramedicine. Look, it's not an exactly direct comparison, but I mean, we don't really hear anyone making the argument for combining, say, police and ambulance.
Oh God,
Let's look at
no.
it that way. I mean, police typically do a lot more work than firefighters. We'll say that. So there's the downtime effect. But I mean, can you imagine a police officer and paramedic and the amount of cognitive load that they would have to put up with? I mean, they already like 85% of their job's paperwork already. They're already under the pump with what they have to know and what they have to do and what they have to be across. Doesn't matter whether you're a general duties detective, whatever level of, and then trying to make them be a paramedic at the same time, I feel like would just be ridiculous.
However, let me stop you here. A couple of weeks ago, an EMS portal, www.ems1.com, conducted a study, not a study, a poll asking its listeners and viewers and subscribers, should paramedics be wearing guns on shifts? Guess what the outcome was?
So it's probably like an American site, so I would say
was it Texan
everybody
study?
wants them.
Over 55, if I remember correctly, percent decided that they want to have, they would love to have guns. Yep. So let's not think about comparing.
Yeah,
that's a whole other can of worms.
But also like bringing it back to like the education thing. And if we're talking about the American model, like the Reddit post that I quoted had a response that said, it does not take much of any education to become a medic. I would say less than a third of what it takes to obtain a bachelor's degree. And I think this is what is the biggest difference between European systems and the Australian system compared to the United States of America, is that it does take a shit ton of learning and training and education to become a paramedic in Europe or Australia. And that's the biggest difference. Like you have to dedicate a lot of time to even get that training, and then even more time to get the exposure.
Absolutely. And then like it comes down to that autonomy as well. I mean, from what I know of the American system, there isn't that much autonomy. They're very, with their online medical control and consulting with doctors, that they're doing that for pretty much everything that's outside of anything. Whereas, at least in Australia here, I feel like we have a little bit more freedom with our clinical discretion. And that I feel like is based on the education and the understanding. Because if you don't have that, then you can't really make those decisions. Another topic that we haven't really spoken about that I found quite interesting is a lot of the fire-based medic services that were discussed on Reddit. There was a couple of them that mentioned that the ALS fire-based service would often arrive first and assess the patient, but they're a non-transporting service. So yes, they're paramedics and all that and do all the assessment and all the management, but then they hand over to another specific ambulance to do the transporting. And I was sort of thinking of that as an issue in itself. I mean, it just feels like you're adding another step. I mean, almost like Chinese whispers. Information always gets lost in handover. You're not always going to get the complete picture, and you're always going to have, not always, but you're often going to have differences in opinion of how to treat something. And I feel like just, having a mandatory change of care where I feel like it isn't required is just opening it up for more errors and more misunderstandings and more issues.
Absolutely agree. And it's not only the thing that information can be lost in handover, but also think about how many biases there is, because every clinician has its own bias. Yeah. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Your diagnostic momentum. And if we're believing what we've been told with some of these comments here, where they're less empathetic towards patients, are those the paramedics that are transporting that patient, are they picking up on the biases from the fire paramedics? Quite possibly. So
all in all, I just think that obviously the history of the EMS service is where this all comes from, right? Because it was like first it's rescue, then it's medical rescue, and now it's medical and maybe some rescue, mostly not rescue. So it's been moving from that rescue side towards the medical side slowly.
Like a primary care, you mean?
Yeah,
Service.
and like the EMS system as a whole, like you used to have like oxygen and blankets, and now you have like everything. You've got ventilators, you've got mechanical compression devices, you're pretty much doing like you're doing a lot of stuff, like lots of like different procedures and operations and stuff like that on the field. So yeah, I think all of the systems will eventually move away and differentiate from the fire service. It's just a matter of time, and it will happen at different paces, because at the moment EMS services are much closely related to like the A&E side of medicine and nursing, and not so much like fire and rescue, and especially not police and law enforcement.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because in my state at least, it's a political thing, but the ambulance service actually falls under the Department of Health, not the Department of Emergency Services. So fire and police, there'll be the Minister for Police and Emergency Services, and we are governed by the Minister for Health. So it's actually very, very sort of separate there. So technically speaking, in that regards, we're not actually an emergency service organisation, but that's where sort of the waters get muddied. But yeah, look, I agree. I think over time, services will change and will adapt and will become, wholly ambulance and wholly fire. In America, that's going to take a lot longer, because there's very, very different situations there. There's a lot of, particularly volunteer-based fire and EMS in a lot of regional communities and the like. So, and just with how fragmented it is to come in and have 300 something million people or whatever in America, to change that for all those people is going to take a long time. Yeah. However, the argument of, just because it's remote and regional, therefore we should do this, doesn't really hold up. I mean, a lot of the locations in Australia can be very remote. I mean, as a country, we've got, I think it's 2.5 people per square kilometre on average. There's some places where, particularly in Queensland, where if you don't have aeromedical, you're basically toast. Like your hospital might be 900 kilometres away. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. But see, these locations are still served by the Australian model, where fire is fire and an ambulance is ambulance. So it can be done.
And like you've got like more cooperation in the proper outback with like A&E side, because you've got like community paramedicine, where you won't have like a healthcare center. You have that paramedic, and that paramedic service will provide the non-urgent service as well, or like parts of it. So I think it's already moved towards more the medical side. But then like I do find value in having firefighters get some medical training, because they are like they don't work that much, they don't get many jobs, so then they're just lying on station. You might as well send them out as the first response to medical jobs, to do those compressions, to carry the patients, to bag them, all that stuff. And if they do some shifts in the ambulance, that will just mean that they will have that slight bit more practice with the emergency medicine side of things. And I think there's value in that. So we shouldn't completely ignore and forget about it. But
no, absolutely no.
Yeah.
But also the pandemic times showed that we can work together. I don't know how it was with you guys, but for example, in here in the United Kingdom, Firefighters sometimes were utilized to drive an ambulance and be our, let's say, assistant in those very basic, on this very basic level, and it worked. It really worked.
Yeah.
And to be honest, now if at scene of RTC, I will say to my firefighter colleague, would you mind bringing me ventilator? They will go to the truck and they will bring me the ventilator. Whilst if a firefighter would ask me for something from their truck, I would be like, I know where the ladder is, I know where the axe is, but all those your Gucci equipment.
Yeah, we know where the wheels are, and that's about it. And there's probably water somewhere, I think.
And there's a ladder up the top, and that's.
And let's stop here then. There's a water, there's a ladder, the 4 wheels, and amazingly handsome firefighters. We salute you guys. All the best.
I also want to one more Reddit comment.
Please
said
do.
that fire truck is cooler than an ambulance, and I just wanted to close off and say that's only because there's so much water in there, and that will absorb heat.
Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gents. Temu Silver, Harrison Steed, Alex Hepner, Gina Laurie, Wendy. That was Group Call Live. See you soon.